she grew up in North Carolina and attended Appalachian State, and she got her first taste of politics running for the student government, and ended up being president of the student government, by the way. So she's been in politics, I guess we'd say, all your life. Would that be fair to say? Yeah. But we're so lucky that Anderson has decided to join us tonight. So will you please welcome Anderson Clayton to the podium.
Highlands, how you doing? All right, that sounded much better. I've never been to Highlands before, and so I got my first taste of what I like to say, a little piece of heaven, even though I always knew Western North Carolina was, but this feels a little bit different, to be honest with y'all. And I'm really excited to be here, and I got to go uptown earlier and just see a little bit about what it's about, and I think that you all have such a wonderful community, and so a very big thank you to our mayor for the work that he does to help make sure that people have what they need here. The work that he did after Hurricane Helene passed through, making sure that people had the services and the resources. That's what good local elected leadership does. And so I hope tonight you all leave here encouraged to step up and find somebody to go run for that town commissioner seat, because we need good people. We need better people in politics. And I don't know anybody better in this room right now to go find somebody like that than the people sitting here in front of me that are willing to spend their night engaging in democracy. So I'm going to try to be a little brief. I'm going to give you a synopsis, hopefully, of where we've been in the last election cycle, because I think it's important with everything going on right now to take folks back a little bit and remind you of what was once good in some ways and what we were celebrating after November. And I know we were also screaming after November too, but we can walk and chew gum at the same time is what I always like to tell people about politics. And I promised Michael over here that I was going to be fired up tonight. So I'm hoping when you leave here you feel a little jazzed and a little energized to do something more. And like Linda said, my name's Anderson Clayton. I've been state party chair since 2023. And people oftentimes look at me and they go, how in the hell did you get in this job? You know, that's the number one question. And really what happened was I was angry. After 2022 in North Carolina, we had lost a lot of statewide elections. We had also lost a Senate seat with former Chief Justice Sherry Beasley. And I looked at the fact that we had lost election after election. We had lost our supermajority in the state legislature. And I think coming into 2023, I looked at it and I said, I can't wait any longer for a party to change before we start changing a party. And so for me, it was I need to step up and I need to run, because right now we need somebody that is willing to do the hard work of going out to every county in North Carolina, trying to build an infrastructure across the state, because I know that North Carolina has the second highest rural population besides any other state in the country other than Texas. And so I ran for this seat because I realized we couldn't cede ground to the Republican Party anymore in places that Democrats had decided we were not going to go into because we were writing them off because we were losing them. Places that look like Macon County, honestly. Even though Highlands might be a bright blue dot here, the county itself was being ignored by a campaign apparatus and also by a state party too. And so when I took over, it was about representing communities like the one that I'm from in Roxborough, North Carolina. I'm from a place that everybody looked at me one night and they go, where are you from? I don't know it. And I'm like, that's what I said about Highlands too before I got here. So now y'all know how I feel. Roxborough, though, for those of you that are not familiar, it's about an hour and 15 minutes north of Raleigh in the center of the state. You're going to hit me before you hit Danville, Virginia. And honestly, I grew up in rural North Carolina being like, I got to get the hell out of here. I can't stay here. I don't want to. I got to make sure that I have a way out. I tell people I wanted to be the next Anderson Cooper before I became Anderson Clayton in some sense, because I really wanted to go into journalism, because if y'all can tell, I like to talk. And I wanted to use that mouth to be able to go out there and tell stories to people about what was going on in the world and sort of be the next, Anderson Cooper or Christiane Amanpour. And how I found myself was at Appalachian State University in 2016, where we sort of find ourselves now in some sense, where Republicans had taken control of the State Board of Elections because we had a Republican governor in Pat McCrory that year. The one time we've had a Republican governor in like the last 8 terms of a governor, might I add for you all. They don't have good luck winning those races. Wonder why when you put up candidates like Mark Robinson, right? But, Pat McCrory kind of got one over on us, I guess, and he ended up in the governor's office that year. And Republicans were trying to make sure they were going to disenfranchise college students. They are actually, when they took control of the State Board of Elections, it meant they took control of the county boards of elections too, and they decided they were going to go after people that they thought would vote more democratically, right? And that happened to be people that looked like me on a college campus, young and also going to school. And so I tell people, the trope that I'll give you is that Republicans say that, college makes people liberal, and it was Republicans in college, in fact, that made me liberal, to be honest with y'all, because I got to see what Republicans wanted to do to young people. They wanted to disenfranchise our votes because they thought they knew how we would vote automatically without ever talking to us and understanding what our issues were, and that they were the same, honestly, as probably every other person on the ballot. That we wanted the opportunity for our communities to feel safe, for people to have a job, and to be able to have a living wage when they graduated from said college, or the ability to go back home and live in their communities and make something of themselves and not have to feel like they needed to leave those communities all the time. And so I went to App and I got very engaged with the Watauga County Democratic Party. They do an amazing job in Appalachian and being able to organize students up there to get out and vote. And in 2016, the Watauga County Democrats ended up suing the State Board of Elections in North Carolina to keep a voting site on Appalachian State's campus. And that was the only county that ended up doing that. It won't Mecklenburg County, it won't Wake County, it won't Durham County, right, where you got all my other major universities in it. It was Watauga County. It was a small-ass county in the mountains that everybody was like, how do you say that again? And people looked at it and they said, man, I can't believe that's what's coming out of the West, right? You all know what can come out of the West, though, at least, and what can come out of the South, right? It's a chance to be able to fight back. But it was the first time that I ever really saw a group of people that were 17 to 70 years old coming together around an issue and saying we're going to push back and we're going to fight back, not because we know we're going to win this fight, but because the fight is worth having. And at the end of the day, Watauga County ended up securing that voting site on campus that year. And in 2016, when North Carolina went red for Donald Trump for the first time, Watauga County went blue for the first time in history. And that was because they registered more students to vote that year. They put a priority and they put their money where their mouth was, and they invested in young people and getting folks out to vote. And that was important for them because of the demographics of that county and what Appalachian State provided to it. I tell you all that because that is what my experience was getting involved with politics for the first time. It's the bug that bit me, that I was like, oh my God, I forget journalism. I got to figure out what this is that I can do. And so I went on from there. I worked on national campaigns for a while. And honestly, I got really disillusioned with politics after 2022 when that cycle happened, and I saw sort of the transition from at our state level. And I came back home in 2021, so a little bit before 2022 happened. But I came back home and I became the Democratic Party chair in my hometown county because I was like, man, I know how to organize now. And I came back home because I realized that, organizing is only going to actually happen with people that care about you and that know you. And you're not going to be able to organize people that don't. And there's a great saying that's led by an anti-racist that I really appreciate. And he says, you can't organize people that you don't love. And I think that that's really important for folks to understand too, is right now it's really easy to hate people that voted for Donald Trump last election cycle. And I need our party to dig in deeper and to say there are reasons why people did that. And there's an opportunity for us to go out there and talk to people that either did that or that did not vote last election cycle, right? Because we didn't just lose this election to Donald Trump, we lost it to the couch. And there's an importance in that, I think, for us to realize about how do we re-engage in communities again? How do we make sure that people know that we're fighting for them again? And I understand right now that's hard for people to do, but I've got a Trump-loving cousin too, just like I'm sure every single one of you do, or someone in your family, somebody you're like, I don't know that I can talk to you about politics right now. I still talk to them about politics because the number one place that people are getting their information right now is not coming from national news or local news. It is coming from the friends and family and the people in their networks, because folks are choosing to disengage from politics at this moment in time. And so the number one thing that you can do is keep talking to people in your everyday lives about conversations that make us uncomfortable, because we have to get uncomfortable in order to win elections in North Carolina. And that means talking to people that may not agree with us on every single issue. I tell you all that because I want to paint you the picture of how I got into this, the ability that I bring to it, of that I care about rural North Carolina. I care about fighting for every voter in this state. I say Dems and friends for a reason, because I know I've got unaffiliateds in here, and I know that I've got former Republicans and people that may not necessarily think that they want to be in the Democratic Party forever. I like you in the Democratic Party forever, though, because we're trying to build our party every day. And so the other part of this that I want to talk to you about, though, is that's my background. What is North Carolina's background, and where have we been last election cycle? So real quick, we were federally, I'm not going to lie to y'all, right? We had a hell of an election, and that came from both two things. I think Joe Biden not actually dropping out of a presidential race either earlier or honestly doing what he said he was going to do and being a one-term president and actually being the generational shift that we wanted to see. But Kamala Harris did not have enough time. And a 100-day campaign, I'm looking at all the women in this room right now, no offense to my men, but forget y'all for a second. To my women in here, Kamala Harris met every bar that we set for her in 100 days. She did. Our party, in my opinion, failed her as a candidate. And we failed her as a candidate when we did not allow for that generational shift to happen. And we owe a lot of people to blame for that. And that is something that we're reeling with right now from a Trump presidency that has come in and rolled out federal cuts that are hurting people in Western North Carolina, that are doing everything they are to folks that are on Medicaid right now with the fear of that their health care may be cut from them. The fact that SNAP benefits in North Carolina is set to end by 2028 because of the big bad bill that we just saw come through DC. All of that. North Carolina last election was the only state in the country to flip 2 statewide races from red to blue. We flipped a lieutenant governor's seat with Rachel Hunt, right? And we also flipped a superintendent seat with Mo Green, everybody. And that mattered, especially for my public educators in the room or people that are former public educators. But North Carolina was also, though, with that, we were the least invested in battleground state last year in the country. Wisconsin was the top invested in battleground state last year in the country. Wisconsin's got 5 million people in it. North Carolina's got 11. And I tell you all that because we were the least invested in. We had 11 million people in it versus a state like Wisconsin. North Carolina still came the second we fell the second, and this is a hard one to say for me in that sense. Wisconsin fell to the right the least. We were there the second least. So right behind Wisconsin, and how much we did not swing to the right. And I think that's important because North Carolina held our ground amongst every other battleground state. And I tell y'all that because I know that you are folks who have either invested in or know our good friend Sherry Beasley. You all are people that may have watched a Cal Cunningham race come through this state too. And seeing the lack of national investment in North Carolina has pissed our state off for a long time, to be honest with y'all, because the South is where Democratic power over the next 10 and 20 and 30 years in this country is going to come from. And people have got to get serious about this state, and the national level knows that now. And we have got a great candidate in our Governor Roy Cooper, who is announced for our Senate seat. And we're excited to make sure that a national apparatus comes through on the promises that they have made to North Carolina this year in investing in us in the way in which that we have seen them do other battleground states, because we have proven that we can do what they're asking of every other state. And if you can do it in North Carolina, if you can win Senate seats here, you can do it again in places like Iowa and Nebraska and other states where we have lost ground in because of the rural populations that we have in North Carolina. And my last thing before I go into, I want to get to y'all's questions, and I know I'm up here on a soapbox, but I'm trying to paint a little bit of just, I want y'all to understand what happened last cycle, some of the good things, because I think a lot of that is lost in the noise right now about everybody, and I understand we are scared about what's happening in the nation, but what's happening in this state, we have the ability to continue to protect citizens in North Carolina from a federal administration that only wants to do harm. And we can do that, and I have these at every table too, because I want you all to feel confident in leaving here tonight with something that talks about the strategic plan for the state party this year. And it's not just a strategic plan for the party for this year and next year, but it is beyond that as well. And what it goes into is a plan that we sat down and made at the beginning of 2023 when we took charge. And it was, how do we wield power again in the state of North Carolina? How do we make it so that we get a Democratic legislature like we had in the 90s again when Democrats had control and we were making a state that was a Jim Hunt, Terry Sanford era of public education and legacy investment in that, right? How do we do that again? It's through our courts. And we saw that last election cycle with Justice Allison Riggs's race. When you talk about what we did good last election cycle, winning a race by 734 votes out of 5.5 million cast in this state. That is what her election came down to. And I tell you all that because we go back again, because history is always important. Chief Justice Sherry Beasley, before she ran for Senate in 2022, ran for a Supreme Court race again in 2020. She lost that seat by 401 votes. Chief Justice Sherry Beasley, if she had been on that court, we would not have lost our courts in 2022. And what happened after 2022, the difference between a Democratic Supreme Court and a Republican Supreme Court is that a Republican Supreme Court came back and said racial and partisan gerrymandering in the state of North Carolina is legal again. Democratic courts in 2022 had come down and said that is not legal, and they made it so they had to redraw our legislative map, or our congressional district maps, right? And our state legislature drew a map that was a 7-7 even split for our congressional races in the state. If that was still the case today, Hakeem Jeffries would be Speaker of the House right now. And we all know that the lack of investment, the lack of importance put on our court races in 2020 is what cost us what we're looking at today. And so we have got to get smarter about our down ballot races and the opportunity to wield power in a way that will benefit not just North Carolina but the nation. And how we do that, and we did check box number 1 of that plan last year with holding that Supreme Court seat. But we have got to do one more with Justice Anita Earls, because we have 7 justices on the North Carolina Supreme Court. We are at a 5-2 minority when I took over as chair in 2023. So we had 2, and my unfortunate reality was that I got stuck with the holds. 2024 and 2026, we have 2 holds on the Supreme Court. Both are 2 Democrats that are on there right now. 2028 is going to be the time when we have 3 Republican seats that will be up on the North Carolina Supreme Court. It's the opportunity for us to take back our courts and to reverse partisan and racial gerrymandering in the state of North Carolina. And that will automatically, right? We're playing checkers right now with California and Texas and Illinois and New Jersey and every other state that's talking about redistricting. They're going to go mano a mano for it, right? North Carolina being able to say, we're the state that you not only have the most competitive Senate race in 2026 in, and the other most competitive Senate race in 2028 in, but you have also got 3 Supreme Court races up in 2028 in this state that will help give back 4 more U.S. House of Representative seats back to the Democratic Party immediately once we flip these court seats. That is power that North Carolina can give. And 2030, we're looking at reapportionment right after that, right? We're going to gain another congressional seat in North Carolina, which means that we also have the ability to be the case that decides what is the majority on the House of Representatives. I tell y'all that because I want people to understand there is a macro plan to what is going on in this state, and it also dives down into your local level races and the ability for us to get more people out to vote. Voting is a muscle, and we need people to want to use it every single year. There are no off years in North Carolina. Every single election matters, and if Western North Carolina didn't understand that from Hurricane Helene happening and who your local elected officials were that actually showed up and did the work in these communities to make sure that people had what they needed, I don't know what else is going to do that for us and for these communities. And so I want y'all to make sure that we are knocking on doors this year, that we're helping do everything that we can to get our good mayor elected again, but also that he's got the support so that he can go out and tell people what he's doing in Highlands so that we can make sure that folks are supportive, and also pulling out more people to vote. 734 votes came from Macon County last year. It's every person that you talk to that may have made you uncomfortable to talk to about politics and asking them if they were going out to vote. But the last thing that I'll say before I get into these questions, because I know I've got a lot of them, and I know I've been up here on a soapbox a little bit longer than 10 minutes, but I think it's important. 200,000 more people came out last election cycle to vote for Josh Stein and Kamala Harris than they did for our our Supreme Court Justice race with Allison Riggs. And that's important because it's just Democrats too that we have got to educate, because we saw Republicans use that 734 vote margin to deny an election for 6 months afterwards because we were not within that 10,000 vote margin that you need to be able to be out of recount land in North Carolina. And so for us, making sure that we're closing that gap, and we are going to work hard this year to create a coordinated campaign that really respects our Supreme Court race and our Senate race and also our state legislative races down ballot too, because we have the opportunity to do so much in North Carolina this year with every single one of you being part of it. And I know right now it feels like desperate times. I get that. I hear it every day. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I get emails about it. I get phone calls about it. I get texts about it. I get DMs about it. I get carrier pigeons about it, honestly. And I think that what I have taken from everything is that People are angry because people care. And I need people to stay angry, and I need people to stay caring right now about this, because the minute that you stop caring and the minute that you stop getting angry is the minute that I start getting concerned. I'll take every bit of the concerns, the questions, the anger that y'all have tonight. If y'all need to sit there and yell at the Democratic Party, come at me, genuinely. But I think let it out here, and then let's go out together and let's make sure that we're showing a force like we need right now against a party that is fundamentally trying to strip away economic opportunities from places that look like Western North Carolina, that are denying public education the opportunity to continue to flourish, and that are trying to restrict free and fair elections, that don't care about raising the minimum wage in North Carolina, that don't give a shit whether or not we have clean air or clean water to drink and to breathe. I mean, that is what we're focused on as a party at a state level, and we should be. And so I'm really happy to be here with you all tonight, and I appreciate just how many of you came out. I know there's some great music happening downtown, so I was like, I know some of my younger folks might be out there, but I really do appreciate everybody. I got some young folks in here. Don't worry, I see y'all. I'm checking y'all. Don't worry, I got my eyes on you. But I really appreciate you all being here. So I'm going to dive into questions. If you've got more of them, please feel free to pop up and ask. But I'm going to read through these note cards real quick if that's okay with everybody too. But just thank y'all so much. I don't know if it was fiery enough, Michael, but we'll get there, you know.
Great.
Okay, this is funny. This is who's going to be the tough guy to lead our party. You're looking at her. I'm just kidding. Roy Cooper's going to do it. I promise. Look, but I think right now we have got and I know that this probably question is speaking about a national party, which I fully understand. I don't necessarily control everything that happens in D.C. I can advocate the best that I possibly need to, but I think one of the things that we're experiencing right now is that we got our asses kicked, and everybody feels a different way about how this party is supposed to move forward right now. Building the coalitions that we need at this moment in time in D.C. can be hard, where you've got candidates that think we should go in one direction, the party that thinks we should be going another, potentially independent organizations that are like, both of y'all are fucked up right now in the head and we don't really know what's going on. Excuse my language for the church crowd in here too. I am sorry, but it does come out. So I do think that is, at least from my opinion, who the tough guy is going to be. And I think you're also going to see a lot of very tough candidates this cycle, and they're going to have to be. Candidates are going to go through some of the hardest bullying, lying. Republicans are going to be deceitful as all hell. They already lie about our candidates anyway, and mailers and everything else that they pull out. And so the number one thing that we're trying to make sure our candidates do is label themselves before Republicans can label them in their communities. And if you're actively out there consistently showing up in your communities, it's a lot harder for somebody else to label you when people know who you are. And that takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of energy, especially in rural places, for people to be able to do that. But that's also the work ethic that people have got to have right now that are running for public office, which is why I'm telling folks, I don't want a politician to be signing up to run on behalf of the Democratic Party. I want a public servant. I want someone who's actually there to do the job it's supposed to be doing. And at the end of the day, that's caring about people. What is happening at the national level is this question, and this kind of goes along with my next one. I don't think anybody right now is necessarily happy with, at least from what I hear, right? I hear people that are very upset about Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and every, elected official that they may or may not have in Congress right now, especially Republicans, right? I do think that Democrats are being heavily critical of ourselves versus looking at a Republican Party, though. And I take that because I look at what happened. We broke a Republican supermajority last November too, which should mean, right, in practice, that we should be able to uphold a governor's veto, right? Okay. 4 of my Democrats sat there 2 weeks ago and were like, no, I'm not going to do that. And there was a big reaction in the party about how, my God, this is what Democrats always do. And I'm like, no, this is what 4 bad Democrats decided to do. This is not what our party chose to do. Our party, actually, led by our governor, chose to veto these bills. Our party chose to stand up for what was righteous and right and also morally correct. And that was the fact that we didn't believe that ICE should be allowed to serve as a state highway patrol and be able to take over that agency. We don't believe in defunding our schools more. We don't believe in taking away the opportunity for anybody, regardless of how they may identify, to have access to healthcare opportunities, because we know that they need it. And so right now, I think what we're seeing is is more and more of that. But I also know that people are very angry right now at a Democratic Party that they're not seeing fight back hard enough. And I do think that their districts are going to have something to say to the legislators that voted the way that they did in the General Assembly. And I think it's a party's job to help do accountability on everybody, both Democrats and Republicans, because I think that is our job as a party, is to hold our own accountable. And so I understand that there is disappointment federally. I also understand there's disappointment here at a state level too. And all I know is that I'm trying to work through that, and that we're trying to bring this party around to one that y'all can really be proud of, to call yourselves a part of. But the number one thing I would say is that you are the party, and everybody that looks at me and says that somebody in Washington, D.C. is pissing them off, I'm like, great. Why do you think they're the leader of the Democratic Party right now? Why do you not look to your local electeds and the people that are in your community that wear that title too, to be the ones that are actually the voice of it? And I think that is because, right, we have historically nationalized our party to the point of our own detriment. And it has been to where the DNC's main mission focus, right, is to get a president elected. And I'm like, well, that's great. But what about Congress and your state legislatures and your courts that are now, truly controlling and dictating everything in states, and also enacting, right, these Republican policies? Redistricting, I think right now what we can do is we're going to uplift. So we're going to do a press call with the Texas Democratic Party chair next week. So trying to amplify the fact, what Texas is basically saying too, y'all gonna laugh at this, they're like, look at what happened in North Carolina. That could be us. Isn't that terrible? And I'm like, yeah, it is. And when we were talking about it, nobody was covering it nationally. Well, doesn't that suck? But we didn't have the opportunity to leave the state and abscond in quorum matter. Republicans could take a vote any day in our state legislature without Democrats being there, and they don't really give a shit. So it's the whole opportunity, I think, of where can we push back as a party and where can you show fight. And I think Texas is really doing that right now. But at least how we're trying to is giving them some of the public pressure to be able to say, yes, look at what happened in North Carolina, and this is the danger of it in the state of Texas too. And then what can the average person do to help preserve our republic? Get involved locally. I mean, y'all are already doing it with being here tonight, but I say that as like, go find out what you want to do and find out what you can do, because I think there's a job for everybody. You just got to tell me what your job is. And I'm like, what are you good at? What can you do? And I know that Betsy's happy to take you, Linda's happy to take you, but like, can you be the person that hosts an event in your backyard? Can you bring people together? Can you help go to protests? Can you be the person that is going to say, okay, I may not want to be doing all that, but I'd love to call every Democrat in Highlands and make sure they're coming to our meetings every month. I'd love to make sure that they know about the events that we're doing. Can you do that? Can you be the person that writes a letter to every new registered Democrat that comes into Highlands? I mean, it might not be that many people, but every person that gets that personal touch from the precinct, it matters. And it matters for the fact that we're chasing margins right now in North Carolina. That's what all of our elections are won and lost on. And it matters every single person that we're able to make that connection point to in this election. Does the party have a time to do a shadow cabinet? Ken Martin tried to establish this. I think the problem right now that we're seeing in media in general is that there's a lot going on. It's just that nobody really knows about it. And nobody knows about it, I think, because of what we're seeing of how, and I talked about this earlier, so forgive me for the ladies that have heard my speech already like 17 million times, but to me, it is a lot about how the Democratic Party cannot reach people right now. Folks are not watching television. They are not turning on the news. They are not trying to access politics. They are actually trying to turn away from it. And so when you look at that, how are we actually reaching people right now who have their blinders on and are trying desperately to ignore it? And I think that goes into why are we having a hard time even getting a shadow cabinet off the ground and helping people understand it, is that there is not a way that the Democratic Party has right now in those ecosystems. I believe that we are building it, and at least at the North Carolina level, the thing that I would point you to, Josh Stein being able to have a sort of influencer cabinet right now that he's got. So if y'all missed it, the governor brought in influencers that were not political influencers, but people that promoted North Carolina's travel, best places to eat in the state, like, where to go, find the best running club, where to work out, what to do, the best coffee in North Carolina and stuff like that, and brought all of them to the governor's mansion and actually did an event where he was talking to them about what his administration was doing related to sort of each subject matter that they focused on. And I think that that is sort of a way to adapt what we're doing with the party and also with creators, and not to say that we have to forget about traditional forms of media. I just think we, again, to the point that I made earlier, have got to walk and chew gum better than what we're doing right now. That does not solve a national problem, it solves a North Carolina problem. And that's the one that I can tell you all about the most of what I'm working on. I do think that that is also happening at a more macro level, but I think it's going to take more time. For those of you that grew up in the days of talk radio, you know Republicans have been doing this for a long time, and that they have been pushing a media ecosystem and building one, you know, and I told this to folks earlier, even CNN and MSNBC in the heat of, in the prime of their rating days, did not have as nearly as much as Fox News did. And I think it's really important for people to understand, like, it is an empire, it is a system that they have built in order to be able to message and reach their voters in an effective way. And that's something right now that I don't think I see in the Democratic Party. That doesn't mean we're not working on building it, but it does mean that we are behind right now in Republicans. And so what I would say is that Republicans have an air war, Democrats have got to have the ground war. Because what I said earlier, people are honestly not looking to the news to be able to tell them about politics. They're looking at their friends, their family, they're picking it up from you. Whether or not you think that they are, and they're retaining it. What, in your view, are the key characteristics we need in a candidate to beat Chuck Edwards? They got to be breathing. Got a pulse in you? Tap, tap, baby. I don't know. You all right? You got a little live in you? I'm just kidding. I think we need people that are willing to meet voters where they are. And I know that's sort of like a broad brush stroke over that, but I think it's NC11's a big ass district. Every county out here, to be honest with y'all, is not the same, and I know that you all know that because you're also from other regions, and some of y'all, like, I grew up in South Carolina, I was in Tennessee, I was in Georgia, I'm in Virginia. I've heard it all from everywhere here tonight, which is kind of cool, to be honest with you. I feel like the entire South is represented in this room right here from each state, and I think that the opportunity that somebody in District 11 needs to be able to do is really want to work the ground of District 11. It's something that we saw Jasmine Beach Ferrara's campaign do really aggressively, and I was actually just talking, I don't know if any of you all were a part of that campaign or remember Ashlyn Jones, who helped run that campaign. I just saw her yesterday, and she was talking about how excited she was that there were so many candidates interested in this district and the opportunity that she saw in the district, and talking about, you know, originally they thought they were going to have Madison Cawthorn against Jasmine Beach Ferrara, and she was like, it probably would have been better if we had had him, right? And so I think making Chuck Edwards as crazy as humanly possible is also part of that strategy, though. It's labeling the opponent. And I know that people don't love to do this because people are like, God, I'm so tired of Democrats talking about Trump or hitting on Republicans, like, talk about what we're for. And I'm like, okay, but if we don't tell people who the opponent is, though, and actually help them understand what their policies are, people tend to go in there and just be like, oh, well, I don't really know this person. I haven't heard that much about him. I don't think they're such a bad guy. And I'm like, whoa, no. How do we get more young people involved with politics, or at least in saving our democracy? How many of you all, when you were young, were involved with politics? See a few hands, right? Was it war that got you involved? Because I'm not going to lie to you. Whenever people tell me that they were, it's like, oh, Vietnam. That is what did it for me. Yes. I get y'all. The other people in this room, you probably looked at it and you said, no, it took until I kind of got retired for me to get involved with politics for the first time, or really, really angry about something for the first time. And I tell you that because I think that most people negate the fact that you have time to get involved with politics when you're retired. Young people right now are working 2 jobs, or they have kids at home, and they are not looking to necessarily get involved with something additional that's going to cost them time, energy, and money. I think that they've got enough on their focus point. But what we are encouraging people to do is we're trying to make sure that we're including and really revving up our college campus program. So we've got 35 active College Dems chapters across the state right now. We have a Young Dems program, so every every county is able to have anybody below the age of 36 is technically considered a young Dem. And so organizing those chapters across the state too, even in rural North Carolina. And a lot of that's just outreach, right? You cannot tell me that in Macon County there's not a high school student somewhere who's like a history teacher would tell you that they care about politics. You know, it's have you done the outreach and the intentional outreach to those students to tell them, hey, did you know you could come volunteer at the Macon County Dems headquarters every Friday when you get off school, or every Saturday on the weekends if your parents could drop you off up here, or if you've got a car and can drive yourself, like that would be amazing, you know. And how do we get people to know that there's leadership opportunities for young people to take on in the party? Because young people also want responsibility. They want to feel like they've got ownership over something and that they can do it. And I think that that is also part of what the party's got to be providing to them. North Carolina ran one of the largest campus programs besides Michigan in the country last year. And so we had fellows out at UNCA, at Western Carolina, and at our Appalachian State, and also looking at Warren Wilson, even making sure that we were trying to cover community colleges in the area too, not just looking at four-year universities, because community colleges are oftentimes the place where you find your people that live in the community that are going there and that are going to live there afterwards. So re-registering them to vote is not as hard as it would be if you've got a student that's being transitory from place to place every 2 or 4 years. And so that is definitely one of the ways that we're going to do it too this year. Governor Cooper is going to run for Senate. What are the keys to getting him elected? Number one, the fact that he decided to run, right? I mean, everywhere. I'm doing this rural tour across North Carolina right now, and I'm telling y'all, Eastern North Carolina, there was not a place that I went that somebody did not look at me and say, when is that man getting in? When are we going to see Governor Cooper announce? When is this going to happen? And I think that goes to show people just the sentiment right now amongst people on the ground about how successful he was as a governor for being a voice of the party, but also a voice of people in North Carolina. And also that people really admire the fact that he actually still lives in the state. Michael Whatley, who's running as the Republican nominee, as the current RNC chair, for anybody that doesn't know, was one of the key lobbyists on the Keystone XL pipeline, and is not somebody that we want running through our backyard, but it is a big oil and big gas lobbyist. And so if that's who we want for North Carolina, that's who's running. And so I think it's a very interesting comparison between somebody like Governor Cooper, who's been a public servant his entire life, versus somebody who has fought for corporations and for big companies to be able to take advantage of little people, right? I mean, that's the reality of what Michael Whatley's entire career has been. But labeling that and also organizing. So North Carolina, for those of you that don't know either, we have got, we're the third largest state party in the country right now. So we have got 22 staff on full time in North Carolina, which is the largest staff that we've had in an even or an odd year, quote unquote, right? So usually you would see a rev up for a state party in an even year. And what we really wanted to do was hold on staff until after the election happened last cycle. And so we've got 6 people in our organizing department. We have an organizing director named Sarah O'Brien, and then Michael Correcchia is our Western North Carolina organizing director. He's based out of Caldwell County right now, and so not too far. And I was talking with Linda and a couple folks earlier, and I was like, Michael's happy to come up and do trainings. He would love to make sure that you all know how to get out and knock doors or Okay, 3 things that I'll tell you that you need to know when you leave here, just so that everybody is wrapped up. Number 1, take this, and if you didn't get a copy of it, I'm gonna make sure that Linda has the online version of it too, so that you all can look at it and just make sure that you all feel not like that you need to memorize this, but I want you to feel confident that the party's got a plan to be able to take back this state and build power in it. It doesn't look like what we have over the last 4 and 8 years. And North Carolina Democrats look a lot different than the rest of the country does right now. And I know that's hard to believe with the position that we put ourselves in, but I genuinely believe, and I've thought this since I took over this chairship, of that no one was ever going to come in and save us. We have to be the ones that save ourselves in North Carolina. And I genuinely believe with the people in this room, the power in this room, that we can do that, and with the power across the state that we can do that. But I need people to believe it with me. I cannot be the only one up here that believes that Democrats and in this party is worth fighting for and believing in. I need each one of you to as well. And I know as much as you can be pissed off with it sometimes and angry at it sometimes, you're still a part of it. and I want you to feel that way, and I want you to act that way, because I think right now we need more people that want to say, yes, I'm a Democrat, and I am honestly to God proud to be one, because it is a proud thing to stand up for human rights and human dignity, for living wages, for clean water and clean air, and for public schools, for economic development, and for people to be able to stay and live and work in their communities that they've always wanted to, or that they've come to because they would like to say, I want to make this state my home. That's what we deserve. So thank you for being here, and thank you for listening to my soapbox. I deeply appreciate it, Macon County. Thank y'all so much. Thank you.